the question on the floor is nice or submissive. Now, I talked about this a lot of times before, about the differences, but I kind of wanted to reiterate some things and kind of define some things. So, how a lot of guys typically view foreign women, it was always kind of saying, these women, they're more submissive and things of that nature. And what I've realized, and a lot of other guys realize, is that um, what a lot of us define as submissive, you know, most guys wasn't really getting that, and that's as far as like a control aspect. So for example, even in like Latin America, you'll find women that'll cook for you. They'll talk respectful. Um, but at the end of in a lot of instances, they're gonna do what they want to do. A lot of guys have realized that a lot of these women do cheat if you, especially if you're not living there. And what I always said was, a lot of people being conflate submissive with being nice. And so women overseas are overall nicer overall, but I want to kind of talk about really what it means to be submissive. Now, it was always kind of looked at as submissive as being like um natural for a woman to for a woman to be submissive. And even women I've talked to, they'll say that the right man, or if a man does ABC, she'll naturally be submissive. But as I kind of thought about it, the way women describe being submissive is like a on and it's more like an on and off switch. And I say this because when it comes to being submissive, if being submissive is predicated on an action, then it's really not natural. If and so I don't look at being submissive as something that you just wake up wanting to serve and be subservient to another individual. I don't think that's not a natural. That's just not a natural behavior. And the conclusion I've come to is that submissive is all about control. Now, some people may not agree, they may not see it right away, but anything related to being submissive is tied to control. Now, my personality, for example, and people that know me, they'll say that, I have a more demanding or controlling personality, and I want to be in control when it comes to, women in my relationships. Um, and so for me, I like a submissive woman. So follow me on this. Like submissive is tied to control, and I'm going to explain why. I'm going to explain why. Um, Three things that I've noticed where women are submissive and or subservient is typically either via religion. If a woman allows herself to be submissive based on what her religion um, expects of her to do. Women are definitely submissive to money because see what women will subject themselves to for money, whether they're trying to get money in the Middle East. I see a lot of guys that have these fetishes overseas, and women, I've heard to an extent of in some countries, guys got women sleeping with dogs for for money. So definitely money definitely gets women to submit to certain things, and that's a form of control. So we got religion, we got money, and then the other part is like force. So, and we know what force is. You could force someone to be submissive physically, or it can be through coercion as well. And I was explaining this to some people as well. So, like, I would say an example of coercion is, let's say mind manipulation. For example, if you're a landlord and this woman can't pay her rent and she's facing eviction, um, you you know what I mean, you basically say, well, or you basically imply that if you have sex with me, I won't kick you out. That's force. That's a form of coercion. So, and then there's a lot of examples of that as well. A lot of times people throw in the dynamic of masculine versus feminine. So if you are masculine, and if you are more masculine to the opposing person, then you can be the less masculine person, or the feminine person. Uh, will be submissive because of that dynamic. And I always use this example as well. Like, if you even like, if you look at prison dynamics and guys that become quote unquote the bitches, it's it's through force. It's through force. It's not by nature. You know what I mean? So a more stronger masculine guy can turn a less masculine guy into whatever. So, but that's an example of force. And so, there's a lot of examples I could use, but what I want guys to walk away with saying is that submissive is not a natural thing. It's all any form of submission is via force, or via or is control based. No one is naturally freely submissive. That is being nice. So that's why I posed the question, do you prefer her to be nice or submissive? The primary difference is that if you prefer her to be nice, it just means that she's going to do things. She's going to be nice. She's going to be polite. If she likes to cook, she might cook for you. The way she talks to you, it'll be in a respectful tone, or things of that nature. But there's no control. She's not submissive, which means that there's no control aspect. So what are kind of the implications about that? And some guys will say, well, why would you want to have control in a situation? Now, if we look at the matrix, where women, on average, aren't really as nice, and definitely not submissive. um, I personally believe that, and I've seen. I watched this show in the U.S. This judge show, one of the black ladies. I can't forget her name, but she basically said that she basically agreed that it is important for, let's say, a spouse to have access to your phone if they wanted to, because that's kind of how most cheating is. Most cheating is through the cell phone. And so, I believe it, and this one black lady judge agreed as well, that access to the phone should be it shouldn't be it shouldn't be no negotiation to that. It should be something both parties are open to in a relationship. And so, a woman that is not submissive, she's not going to let you go through her phone. So that woman that you feel like is nice and things like that, if you want to randomly go through her phone or ask to go through her phone, she's not going to want you to do that. She's not going to allow you to do that. Therefore, she's not really being submissive. She's not being submissive through that action. I personally believe men should have influence. Like some things that the red pill community talks about is that you have to be able to put your foot down. Women do respect that when you put your foot down, even though they may agree with what you're trying to put your foot down with. Women respect men that can put their foot down effectively. And so if you want to say no to a girl's trip, or she trying to go out where you feel like it's not really appropriate for the relationship, or a lot of arguments come into play if you try to um, tell your woman what you don't want her to wear. A lot of women will say, well, that's controlling and things of that nature. So you can get a woman that's nice, but if you feel like she's not dressing appropriately, or if it's somewhere you don't want her to go and she's going to go anyway, and you have no control over the situation, then that's kind of the pitfalls of just being with somebody nice that's not submissive, because there's no control. You have no influence. Now, on the flip side, if it's submission, um, niceness is going to come with that anyway. Now, some may say, well, is she nice out of fear? If she's not nice naturally. I mean, that's a fair argument. But if you with a woman that's submissive, meaning that you have control, whether it's with your money, whether it's because y'all share the same religious beliefs, or whether that you are able to be submissive by force. And I'm not saying physical means, but you have a way to whether it's through coercion or intimidation, or the fear of you leaving her, because that's like coercion too. That's a forceful action too. So whatever the mechanism is, where she's submissive, if you don't want her to wear something you feel like is too provocative, she's going to submit to that, because there is a there is some consequence, there is some consequence, or maybe looming behind that. If you don't want her to go out to uh, you know a bar or a club with the girls, or if you don't want her to take a girls trip, or whatever you want her not to do or want her to do, if she's submissive, that means you have a mechanism where you have control. And some guys would prefer that. There are going to be men that's going to try to shame men for wanting a woman to be submissive, and vice versa. But everybody is different from what they want. You see, Tim Howard said he prefers submissive, a woman being submissive. Yeah, if you like the stream, please like the stream. Do it for the algo. Ronan said, I agree with you. I can have my lady not post things or remove things on her social media pages. Yeah. So if you have that control over your relationship, and she complies because of some perceived consequence, then by definition she is being submissive. That's what I want. That's what I prefer. That's what I prefer. Um, a woman being nice to you, like I said, it comes along. That's the other caveat. So if she's nice, and I'm going to talk about too, women having their own money. So if she's nice, for the most part, the niceness is genuine. You might not get the submission, but at least you get a woman that's genuinely nice. She doesn't. She may not have any resent for you. And if the tables were turned, and you know, if she's nice, you don't have to worry about how she would, be if the tables was turned, or if your financial situation was turned. Basically, if she's genuinely nice to you, she's gonna be nice regardless of how much money you got, how much control you got. She's just nice because of her character. So which is a good thing. But she's not submissive, meaning that she's gonna do what she wants to do for the most part. Now, a woman that's just submissive, you might get a woman that may be nice, but it may not be genuine. So she may be, she may smile and do things and sing and have a good attitude, but she could have some resentment. So if you have so whatever control mechanism that you may have, whether it's money, whether it's her, y'all religious beliefs, whether it's via, some type of force, coercion, or threat, or her fear of you leaving her, whatever the mechanism you have over that submissive woman. Once you lose one of those mechanisms, then if she has resentment, she might not care. She might not care anything about you. All that fake niceness goes out the door. She will leave you hanging. So, I think basically what I'm saying is that it's on both sides. There's pros and cons to having a totally submissive woman, because you may get fake niceness, and then it's pros and cons to getting a woman that's just naturally nice but not submissive, because she'll be nice, but you're not going to have any control over the relationship. um I mean, yeah, ideally you would want both. That's a different conversation. Can you find a woman that's nice and submissive? um yeah, the nice women you would have to get from cultures where women are typically nice, and I think a lot of us observe those cultures. And then you would just have to find a submissive woman within those cultures as well, which means that, um, if your control mechanism is finances, it means that it's going to have to be an economic disparity. If it's religions based, most likely it's probably going to be more towards Islam, because uh, people influenced by Christianity is not really as prevalent. And if it's by coercion, then it's more likely a woman that either destitute, or have low self esteem. I'm just going to keep it real. Some form of low self esteem. And women fit that mold in a lot of countries. They fit that mold in a lot of countries. Uh, I think in the U.S. you can get might not get you don't really get as much genuine niceness anymore. You can get submission. Um, there are women that you can have some influence with money, but the Me Too movement pretty much punished men with money that's used that money for influence. So you can't really flex like that anymore. Religion is pretty much obsolete in the U.S. And coercion, or a woman with low self esteem or destitute, maybe, but still, it's you know, once she becomes empowered through feminism, then you're pretty much gonna have a wake up call.